Hello, welcome to Innovation World Young Collaborators Podcast Series. My name is Nishka Lal, and I'm currently a CS student at Georgia Tech, a researcher and an entrepreneur passionate about building technology for real-world impact. I publish research in AI bias, I've built ventures at the intersection of tech and social good, and I've shared my journey on the TEDx stage as well. And I'm most excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for allowing me to chat with you.
Of course. Now, I know leadership is often a very talked about topic. But I think it starts in often the most quiet moments when someone chooses to show up, to serve, and honestly just do the right thing when no one's even looking. Today's conversation will be just about that, about voluntourism, purpose, and how meaningful service can grow into real-world impact. I'm joined here today by, as mentioned before, Kimberly Haley Coleman, founder of Leaders of Transformation, who's dedicated her work to developing leaders rooted in service. Together, we'll explore how service becomes leadership, how impact grows through people, and what it means to lead with the intention in the world we are building next. So, just a simple question to start off, like, how did this story of yours begin? How did you create Leaders of Transformation, and kind of like what was your path to get here?
So it was pretty circuitous. It wasn't like I started out when I was your age and said, "This is what I'm going to do and I know where I'm going." It wasn't like that. I was actually following a path that was about a master's in art history and an MBA in international business. So there were some unifying themes that I was always looking to other cultures. And I traveled a lot growing up. But I was in the for-profit world, working and at development with a space company. I traveled a lot, and I was finding myself in countries over the weekend for work, having already seen the sites and didn't know what to do with my time, but I wanted it to be meaningful and useful, and so I started looking for service opportunities, and I just couldn't find any. They really. It's understandably, most service isn't set up for some kind of a 2 day thing for really small teams. It takes a lot of time to organize and supervise. And so it was that frustration and inability to find that made me want to do it more. And then once I did it, it really lit a fire under me in terms of honestly what it did for me, getting to get out of a dog eat dog competitive world and do something like this, getting to know somebody side by side, working on something that is important to them, what it did for me in terms of connecting me to the world. And when I would come home and tell people, and other people were excited and interested and wanted to do it, that is what motivated me to lead others into doing it. And really, that was the genesis.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So was there like a moment that you kind of remember very specifically that kind of changed this perspective from like a kind of a for-profit dog to dog against competition world to more of like, learning about other people and growing that way?
It's I didn't have one moment. It was a series of moments. Obviously, we all need to support ourselves, and there's a certain realistic amount of any life where we have to do our laundry and make sure the floors are clean. But it was something that just lit me up, getting to see humanity again and not just cubicles. This feeling of we can help one another and we matter, and that when I think about your generation, one of the challenges is you could see so much. It's so globalized. You can contact anyone, but then your place in the world might feel like it fits somewhere in the scrolling, which isn't right. And it's so unrealistic. Obviously, everyone talks about how curated, and yet if you put it down and you're working side by side with someone and you're not looking at your phones, all of a sudden you feel a place in the world. You feel like what you're doing is significant instead of feeling disconnected from it. So I would say that there have been so many projects that do that. And I have to say, this is definitely not about me leading, in the sense that it's the local communities that choose the projects and how we're going to do them and with what material. So I feel like leadership often starts with that listening, and it may not sound like somehow an assertive action, and yet it's the most powerful thing we can do for leading, to begin our leading.
Yes, of course. I know you mentioned people kind of in this new age of scrolling, they don't get to see, but many people do care a lot about people and they want to make change, but struggle to kind of sustain that action over time. They might go to like one food pantry or help out one day and then not ever do it again. So what do you think separates like that passion from just like purpose that people kind of fade away?
So, there is a bit of muscle memory to showing up with humility and patience and listening. And if someone is serving consistently and learning to read the context of a situation and look for the real challenges and beauty of a situation, it changes how you show up. And that's whether it's your businesses, your friendships, your family, your community, all of it. So I would say that, you probably hear it in my voice. Passion is emotional. Purpose is practiced. And I feel like there's a bit of a mantra and a meditation to get on that path. But letting that initial passion and emotion, that spark, so that will then create that constant sustainable fuel. So purpose is quieter, and yet it's what puts us in that direction, right? It survives boredom and fatigue and inconvenience, but what sustains action is really that structure that we have, the discipline to put in place, those habits, the making sure we're accountable, that other people are keeping us accountable, and that our community, that we're continuing that dialogue for when that motivation inevitably fades or disappears. So I think all of those pieces and making sure you've got your compass focused to begin with, and then setting up those routines so that it's a part of what you do to get you through that those moments of boredom or habit.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I know you mentioned purpose is very quiet, like something that you believe in throughout the entire time, as like your compass that kind of guides you. So like what do you think like how do you recognize success then or like change then if most like purpose or passion is quiet and kind of like invisible to the bigger scale audience?
So in terms of recognizing success, are not looking for some of the traditional signifiers. Like we are not counting how many flags are on a map and trying to cover more territory. If we're going into a community and people aren't coming up to us with smiles and wanting to be a part of what we're doing and welcome what we're doing, then we're doing something wrong. So, being invited back, being included in meals and dances and celebrations, and there's a lot of soft indicators that we're looking for. We have coordinators on location and all of our project locations, and they are the magic for us. They are who we speak to, and they are in charge of our volunteers and the communication with the community. And they're from that community, right? So they have a sense for what works and what doesn't and what people want us to do.
Yeah, that's
And
beautiful.
they really are able to be on the front lines in terms of helping us recognize whether what we're doing is successful or not.
Mhm. So as it seems like leadership transformation are kind of more they invest in people rather than like large scale solutions. So why do you think like long-term change kind of begins by investing in people and developing them over like fixing a broader system or like a bigger issue per se?
Well, we aren't a paramilitary organization. We're not a government organization. We're not a huge corporation. So we're not coming in and building roads and hospitals. Uh, but if we were, it would probably lose a big portion of what it is we're after because we are not just about the project. It's about what happens when our volunteers are working side by side with those local community members. So if we had 100 people building a hospital, is the person building the hospital really getting to know and understand that culture? And they really aren't. We've got to keep it small scale. So that's one reason we're doing that and how it really feeds into the success of what we're looking for. It also means that the local community is seeing us and their perspective about our culture and humanity is equally shaped. So when you have these smaller scale projects, I mean, you may think of it as not having a very material impact, but you've only got a few volunteers and a few community members, and hey, we've installed a concrete floor in the home of a single mom, or we've assembled and distributed wheelchairs to landmine victims, or we're building homes in Kenya, wattle and topsoil. This makes a huge impact just a few days. A lot of people really want to focus on that success, that we build this, we made this concrete thing. I can take a picture of it, I can measure it and all that. But it was the fact that now the whole local community looks at our volunteers and the place we came from with warm fuzzies, and they feel connected to the world. They feel like, hey, I matter. Somebody didn't just send a check. They came over here and used their own hands. I am worth something.
Yeah.
And the volunteer feels like, hey, I may not know how to build houses, but the local community was able to teach me how to do that. We did something together. I feel connected to humanity. You know, writing a check doesn't do that. Going and 100 people building a hospital without any locals, that doesn't do. So the small scale, the word small even seems misaligned for the question, because none of it's small in terms of the impact, it has for that family or the person we're serving or serving alongside, and the person doing the serving. The big, huge power comes from these small scale efforts.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I did nonprofit work when I was like younger, and I think that's very true. I think that one-on-one interaction is like the most beautiful part of service overall. And I've kind of seen like how that kind of changes a person overall, but how do you think like that one-on-one service really changes someone's identity or kind of how they see their responsibility towards the world or just the bigger picture of like humanity, as you mentioned?
So I'm going to answer that by referencing the Peace Corps, which has been around since the 60s. John F. Kennedy set that up specifically so that he would have, we as a nation would have constituents to choose from to help solve cross cultural and cross border issues. So, Peace Corps volunteers are in place for 27 months. They really get to know a local community and help them. That was the real focus. And people have tried to measure. The Brookings Institute back in, 2012 was trying to measure, for every dollar we put into hard power, how does it compare as an investment for every dollar we put into soft power? Hard power meaning, for every person in the military. At that time, the study, I think it was $400,000 per soldier. If you took the entire cost and divided it by how many we had, it was around $400,000 per soldier for a fully loaded cost. That's their training, their medical insurance, their uniform, their machine guns, all that. And what do we get for that $400,000? For a Peace Corps, we're putting about $16,000 into them. And for that $16,000 we're putting in, what are we getting out of it? And really the upshot is they couldn't come to a dollar figure. But when you had communities of people seeing somebody teaching their kids in a school for 2.5 years, and that community felt warm and connected and good feelings about our nation and didn't want to bomb them because of it, how do you put a price tag on that? If we're, and the real upshot is, while we may need a military and we may need hard power, we have been underutilizing soft power, and all of us are capable of doing this. And that I would say that we should step outside of some of our normal expectations for trying to measure, because what I'm talking about and the kinds of soft power that impacts everybody involved, it isn't just having the impacts I was mentioning previously. It also is producing profound joy
Yeah.
for the person serving and for the person receiving it. So I've lost track of the question because I got so caught up with that. But um,
Well, amazing answer. Yeah,
anyway,
no, no, no. I totally see your point. I think like the joy, I think, is the most beautiful thing that changes someone's kind of experience and all of that. Kind of just getting to know someone one-on-one is beautiful, especially someone who like needs you as much as you need them sort of mindset. So I think that's beautiful. But how
yes.
about for someone who kind of feels like they have a call to lead, to help, but don't know where to start? They're kind of like shy, they don't know how to
Mhm.
kind of reach out. How would you kind of guide them toward their first small step?
So, everybody knows that, in their community, there are going to be people in need. And it starts at home, it starts in our backyard, at neighborhoods and communities, and making sure that they're okay, that they have to, as we are talking right now, our entire country is blanketed in ice and snow and cold temperatures. And um, Lord knows there are people who don't have warm houses, or their water lines may be frozen and they can't get out to get new groceries. So, being able to serve the people next to us is kind of the front line. And it's hard because so many of us are led by routines where we're going to work, to home, to school, the grocery store, work, home, school. Maybe we're going to book club or tennis or whatever. So this is where, relating back to a prior question, in terms of making that happen, making that service a part of your habit, carving time out for it, because otherwise it just doesn't happen for people. It's not that people don't care; it's that we don't realize how stuck we are in our routines.
Yeah.
And that's why you make it a part of a routine. And I mean, this is, the people who are the healthiest amongst us. Usually it's because the routines they've set up, whether it's about how they're moving their bodies or what they're putting in them, that there's some kind of routine to it. And the same, I will say, for service. So making sure that even if it means, hey, I'm going to every other Sunday at 1 o'clock, or I'm going to show up at my church, or I'm going to show up at my community event, you know, we do get criticized by people who will say, why are you helping people in Cambodia when we have people in North America that have needs? And it's a valid point, because they do. There's plenty of people without health care, and we do have all sorts of issues with food supply, and it's a long list. That said, for the extent that somebody's already helping their community and supporting them and still has capacity to go someplace else, what international service provides is getting your mind space to look at a culture, the real beauties and real challenges that a traditional tourist wouldn't see, so that you can reevaluate your own norms, what you think is right or wrong or normal. And that can be hard to do in our local communities, where we've got the same surroundings over and over again. And all sorts of examples. In Thailand, we're working with Buddhist monks, and for them, one of the rudest things you can do is show impatience. And in our culture, one of the rudest things you can do is be late. These two things are very different. So having the discussions and looking at, why would that be? What is it about their faith structure that leads them to this? Or even to think about our own. What is it about our culture that's productivity minded that does that? And unless we get out of our normal routine, our normal surroundings, it can be really hard to get that lens where you can get that large view that helps you get to know yourself better.
hmm Yeah, for sure. So, as you mentioned, kind of like getting out of our normal routines. But what else do you think kind of these young leaders are not doing enough or are underestimated for in the current day? And what responsibility do you kind of think that they still need to step into or kind of get one more step ahead of? I know you mentioned like breaking out of your routines or stopping from just scrolling and seeing the world for like a
Yeah,
bigger picture.
making time for it. But I do feel like, well, your generation is underestimated in so many ways. Certainly, there's a facility to learn and adapt um, in your generation, and so for someone in your specific generation, a challenge that I think is often there is when so many people, like I have two daughters, they're 19 and 21, and they're surrounded by, scrolling and looking at this universe that's curated and fake. We all know it is, but it also leaves you not knowing how you're going to make a difference. And so in order to feel that, in order to get out, as you're passing by any sort of student organization flyers, people are looking at, hey, what social activity is happening, what activity is happening related to whatever, I don't know, pickleball or whatever sport or whatever. But having an ear for, hey, where can I add value in a way that's going to help someone else stand on their own 2 feet, look for those opportunities first. And you guys are always surrounded, even in your social media, just adding one extra thing to follow. It might be University of Chicago Sustainability Initiative. You start following that so that when they have activities, you think, okay, well, I told myself I knew it was going to add joy and meaning and purpose, but I haven't done anything. I'm going to follow these new social media feeds and I'm going to commit to whatever it is once or twice a month to go. And it can take some time to figure out what specific hook is going to work for you. But if anything, I would say your generation deserves this because of, again, that deep, profound connection that really is easy to lose, particularly when there's a big digital feed influencing how you think about yourself. And this is probably the most effective, I would argue, the most effective way to get out of that so that you don't feel by yourself and don't understand what you're able to do to our universe. And yeah.
So like as you mentioned about like kind of scrolling and being all in like your own world, do you think that like AI or digital age has made it harder for people to kind of be connected? Or do you think it's like kind of a median to be more connected worldwide or globally?
Well, so we're still at Global, we're learning about some of this and grappling with that ourselves. I mean, we're obviously a high touch industry in terms of what we do, but even we are influenced by it. And I suspect it's like anything else, like the internet, electricity, or television, that it can be used for good or for bad. And there's still so much to be written in this area. And one of the things that we've done with AI is try to create podcasts where our orientation packets that are 50 pages, try and making that into a podcast so people can listen to it. We still found it's usually better for us to do what I'm doing with you now, where I'm actually talking about it instead of letting AI do it. But we're still grappling with that. Like how is AI going to hook into all of this? And it's your generation that'll probably lead the way on this in terms of what are effective ways we can really harness this kind of revolutionary technology in a way for good. Because it's easy to imagine the reverse. And the more minds we have trying to come together and think of that, it's for the better. And it's probably going to be youth that leads us in this area. And this is, you had mentioned before, this really isn't about just showing up. It's how you show up. How do you use character in terms of leadership and making sure that we're all headed a good place? And so certainly setting purpose and mission, just as it would be with a business, is worthwhile for a lifetime, for a life, for a person. And I hope that your generation gives yourselves the time to think about that.
Of course. And if someone wants to reach out to you or like engage with your program, how would you recommend they go about that?
So it's so easy to find us because we're anywhere. If you searched Globe Aware, whether it's podcasts, YouTube channels, social media, all the stuff, we're there with those words every direction you look.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Innovation Role at Young Collaborators Podcast Series. Before we go, would you like to do any last minute like words of the wisdom or just advice for the next generation, especially as we kind of go off into this new age of AI, but of course with like a mindset to help everyone else as well?
Well, so we value you, especially if you're young and you're hearing this. We value you. You need to value yourself. And we've got a bright future with you. So we're counting on you, but we'll be there with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And you can always learn more information about Innovation World programs at innovationworld.org. And this is Nishka Lal signing off. Thank you so much.